What is up, everybody? Joe Sib here. Welcome to Rad Parenting. Sitting across from me as co-host and the master, Anea Bogue.
Anea Bogue.
How are you?
I'm good.
I switched up our intro.
You did? Is that because I just commented on it?
Yeah.
We got to keep it fresh.
Well, I went back through some of the shows just because I like to listen to how they sound, especially since we're in our new room, our new studio, and I wanted to make sure that it sounded better, and I feel it does. If you guys ever have any comments on that, do not hesitate to let me know. Just email us at radparenting@gmail.com. Also, any ideas for shows you have. Today's show is spawned from a couple emails that we got, because you remember when my daughter threw her party a couple weeks ago?
Yes.
A few people were like, how did that go? How was it? Etc. One of the things that I was super, I guess the word is, I was just taken back by how well she knew how to throw a party.
That's interesting. And I think I know what that means, but I think maybe qualify that.
Yeah, I don't want people to think like, yeah, because the cake got tapped and the beers, and it wasn't anything like that. She knew that there was rules from the beginning. And this show, we'll just dive right into it. This is going to be geared towards teenagers. And if you have a toddler, you may be like, well, I could never imagine them having a party. But I'll tell you right now, that day will come so fast. I was driving to pick up speaker cords for the PA that they had. They had a DJ and everything. But while I was driving to go get those, a buddy of mine who has just had his first child, his daughter, he was saying, wow, she's a week old. And I go, man, you know what I'm doing right now? I'm driving to get speaker cable for a DJ that's playing a party in my backyard, and my daughter's throwing it. It's the last day of school, etc. And he said, and you're down for that? And I go, no, not really. But I was more down that the fact that she took the initiative and the responsibility, which made me feel good at the end of the day, that my wife and I had done a good job with raising her. But the show today is really going to tackle, I want to get your thoughts on it. I got my thoughts on it, and then it'll be like a word salad.
Yummy.
a salad of ideas and thoughts. But the idea that in our household, drinking has always been a part of the social aspect. We've had parties at our house since the kids were, since they've been alive.
Right.
They've been around from their first birthday party through the big Thanksgivings. Through all the holidays, you went to our 4th of July party.
Yes, it was awesome.
Yeah, and
I
so think I'm going to throw that over to you. How about in your life with your kids?
Yeah, well, so there was my approach in general with my children has always been that the things that would be taboo in our house are not the things that some parents might be like, oh yeah, definitely off limits. Like including, being social, responsible drinking. And I know that you would say the same thing, like, drinking's always been like, there's a way to do things in moderation and responsibly and not have extremes. For some people, I certainly respect that, there's some households that need to be dry households because alcohol has been an issue or, drugs have been an issue or whatever. But in my house, definitely, not that we've thrown a lot of parties, but we definitely like to. And when we do, alcohol has been present, but we've always been about consciously modeling responsible behavior around that.
Okay. The thing that we started with growing up, and it was a conscious decision because when we had our kids, there was a moment in time where I was holding my son and I had a beer in my hand, and I was like, or holding my daughter and I had a beer in my hand. And I was like, there was a moment where I was like, wow, my daughter and a beer, like two of my favorite things, like boom, and there was that moment. And then I also thought like, how I was raised is really different, I think. But it was it was different in the sense that it was just simpler, I felt, with the way my parents handled alcohol with us.
Tell me about that. What does that mean?
I mean, and this is the theory that I've applied to my family. And check in with me in 5 years. The theory that we've had around the house is we've had people here to drink. It's never been there's been like margaritas, being made, but it's never been like someone showing up with a bottle and there's like shots being drank.
Like the objective is just to get messed up.
Nothing like that. It's always been very, very social. Also, my parents were very, very, they never ever drank so much that they got drunk. I've never seen my mom or dad drunk. I've never seen them act a different way than they were acting before or after. And less on my dad's side. He isn't a real big drinker, but my mom, through the time I was a teenager, I remember she had her 50th birthday party and, huge party. It was always social in the sense that there's always food provided. There's always plenty of drinks for people that don't want to drink. And you're cruising in that beer and wine world where there was never like, hey, we're going to throw out some Manhattans for everyone or the bottle of bourbons on the table. Like that never was there. And also, there was also a constant awareness on my parents' end while they're throwing this get together. Like they never checked out. They were being responsible.
Yes.
If there's
as
guests,
the hosts of the party.
Yes, they were, and that transferred on to me.
Yep.
Which I think transferred on to my daughter because at this get together, there's the first, she looked in and so did we. We looked into all the laws. There's no alcohol being provided, obviously, from us, and that was just the rule. Like, hey, you can have a party, but you can't. But then you're also nervous of kids showing
bringing
up,
stuff out,
and I'll just throw it out there for the folks that are listening is that I'm not really seeing that the drinking's a thing. It's definitely the edibles. That's definitely what.
We're into a whole other. Oh, you mean in terms of it being something that the kids can be indulging in?
Yeah.
It's not on your radar.
It's
So in
not on
other
your
words,
radar.
if they showed up with a bottle of whatever or a case of beer, you'd know what was up.
Yeah. So now now when you're having a get together like this, kids are coming in and they don't have a backpack with them and they don't have anything with them. But you don't know if like, hey, did they eat an edible before they came here? So, when I'm thinking about that, it's like, okay, so that's just another factor in having a teenager that wants to have a celebration.
Okay, so if we were to look at this as because I'm thinking about our audience and what they're listening to, because I feel like as we chatted about this before we started today, that really, one of the questions and your question out the gate of, what did you do in your house is really how do we help parents navigate
exactly
this question of.
I can give you the question.
Okay.
Is that for the parents that are not going to drink around their children and not going to have gatherings where there's alcohol, and that's a part. And I have a few friends that are raising their children that way, which I respect. I 100%. I'm like that's great. That's the path you want to choose. I love it. Awesome. I have no problem when I go to their house. I don't have to. I'm fine with the juice box.
Right.
Okay. Here we go. The question is for the parents that are listening to our show, they go, gosh, you know what? Yeah, we do have beers.
We're social drinkers.
We're social drinkers. We have the backyard with the barbecue and the cooler full of beer and the wine on the table. And I realized, wow, Joe's bringing up something I never thought of. My son and daughter, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now they're realizing that there's drinks and, let's face it, booze around the house. How do you work and navigate in that world? And
okay.
that's the question to you.
Anea
Bogue. Full name.
Just a little one, yeah. So I
and I will say no right or wrong answer. I'm just like, what is your theory on it?
Sure. So
that's where we're coming from, everyone. Just it's an open discussion. We're not saying
do this,
do this, or do that. I'm
right.
just telling you what's going on in my world.
So here's what I know, and I'll give sort of my personal and my professional perspectives. So on a personal level, I was also raised in a home where my parents didn't make things taboo. Our home was open to our friends coming over. And I think that even though they never overtly stated it the way that I might state it with my children, I think the general feeling was it's fun to socialize with people you care about. They were always about feeding people and offering, whatever drinks if people came over and having a good time. And the approach was sort of like, if you're going to try drinking when we got to, 15, 16, 17 years old, do it here first. And that is really sort of carried over in my own parenting in that I absolutely believe that adolescents, as part of the variety of ways that they are exploring who they are and navigating, social relationships and social interactions and the way that they want to be in the world, that inevitably they are going to, whether it's before college or while they're in college, they are going to experiment with alcohol, with drugs. And what I know, and I could probably find some solid data to back this up, because a lot of it I get is from, through personal experiences that young women that I work with that go off to college, that the kids that had the most restrictions before they went to college were the ones that just were like out of control the first time they were
Everyone
away from home.
remembers that. You move into the dorm. I remember I moved into my dorm in college, and I'd already been living on my own for 2-3 years. So when I moved into the dorm, I was just stoked to have a place that was okay, a roof over my head for this, amount of time. Awesome. I remember the first night I moved in, everyone on the floor was like, "We're getting beers." And I'm like, "Well, yeah. I mean, of course you'll get beers."
Right.
And they couldn't even figure out where to get them. I'm like, "No, dude, the liquor store, I knew downtown San Jose. Let's go."
Yeah.
Wow, really? And then, of course, the kids that have never had beers drink all the beers. And they end up going to the emergency room that night
or
for alcohol
puking
poisoning
or whatever. Yep, exactly.
And then I was like, "Yeah, you don't have to drink 30 beers. Try, 4 or 5."
Right. So I think as a rule of thumb, like whatever it is, and I've said this many times, that we ultimately want our children to take with them or to be able to make good decisions around once they're out of the house, we want to give them a safe lab, if you will, in which to practice trying those different things on. And so some parents really freak out. And I want to just quickly acknowledge that there are human beings out there for whom alcohol is a very serious issue.
Absolutely.
And I don't want to make light of that. I absolutely respect and really appreciate those adults out there who have even, it could be a family history of alcoholism, that have said, I can't take this chance. Like to the extent that there's a genetic predisposition, I want to be aware of that and responsible around my kids in terms of what I'm setting them up for. But I think as a rule of thumb, the more knowledge, the more information our children have about whatever, and be able to like work with that information while they are in the safety of their primary home, the better equipped they're going to be when they go out into the world.
Remember the story I told you about the kid that was riding the bike and he took a slam on his face and literally almost... for 3 weeks, he had the full, the road rash on the side of his face. And I remember, do you remember the story?
I don't, and I can't believe that I don't, because I had something similar happen when I was young, and it's just horrifying.
Well, the whole point of the story was when I was sitting there talking to his mom, she was like, yeah, we kept telling him, man, you're going down, like when you're learning how to ride a bike and you just go, yeah, you've never taken that slam, so you don't know what the feelings or the repercussions of that slam are.
Yep.
Well, obviously he took the slam and he had the face to prove it. But what had happened, he had survived and he learned, I'm not going to be the guy pedaling down the hill that fast because I don't want to end up with my face on the concrete like it just was.
Right.
And I've always had this attitude, and tell me if this is wrong, because I know right now people are like, are you going to lead to like drinking and the idea of doing drugs of like, hey, if it doesn't kill you, it'll make you stronger. I'm not throwing that idea out there, but I'll throw out just the personal decision or my history. You drink too much as a kid, you throw up. It's a nightmare. I remember having that happen. I remember one night, I was supposed to go with some friends. We were waiting for everyone to show up. The ride never came, and usually it did. So you would go to the show, run around in the pit with your friends and sweat out all the alcohol.
Yeah.
We used to say that, like, yeah, a couple beers, you'll sweat it out. I remember this one night I never drank. This kid came to my house. He's like, yeah, dude, let's drink gin. I'm like, okay. So I drank gin.
What's gin?
Yeah, I didn't know it.
Yep.
And to this day, I can't even smell gin because I was like so sick.
Yeah.
It was a nightmare.
Yep.
But I also remember at 16 or 17 years old saying, I'm not a hard alcohol guy.
Right.
And I never touched hard alcohol after that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just like, I'm not that guy. Same thing with weed. I smoked weed once. I tried to have a little weed career for a second. Like, I'm a weed guy.
Yeah.
And then I freaked out. And, and it was a nightmare. And I just was like, that's not for me.
Yes.
How do you, I almost wish, and is it wrong to think, I almost wish those experiences could happen so that just, I don't want to do that anymore.
Well, that's what I think I am suggesting is in the safety of a teenager's own home with adults that he or she trusts. And I'm not saying, I don't think you dive in and go, okay, you know what? You're going to get totally messed up tonight.
No, yeah.
It's more like here's what we know. Like, there's actual data out there. Other people have already been through this as an entire like culture. When you look at countries in Europe where it is acceptable from the time kids are quite young to have a glass of wine with dinner as a very sort of civilized, part of socializing over dinner, you have a lot less incidence of really irresponsible alcohol use among those same kids as they get into their teenage years, their later teenage years, their early adult years. That's important information for us to have, because we know that in the adolescent brain that is, remember, first and foremost trying to say, I'm going to be an individual. I'm figuring out who I am as an individual. I'm going to assert myself as an individual. Anything, when you put up big walls and big taboos, some kids are going to adhere to those walls and or respect those limitations, and then the minute that they get away from you, i.e. college, they're going to go out of control.
Do you ever feel that you do not have enough time in the day to do what you're supposed to get done? You're going to work, you're maybe trying to hit the gym, but you forgot that, I got to pick so-and-so up from daycare. I got to get my dad over to his doctor's appointment. I wanted to pick up the house before I left. Wow, check it out. How am I going to get everything done? Well, I'm going to tell you right now. Go to care.com. Care.com. Care.com is the world's largest digital marketplace for finding and managing family care. That is right. Family care needs can be unpredictable. You got sick kids. You need someone to stay home. Man, both parents are out there trying to make a living. Your kids get sick. Who's going to stay home? Who's going to miss out on that cash? Now you go to care.com and they'll have someone for you that can look after your kids. Don't stress your life away. Seriously, most working parents worry about their kids every minute of the day. You're more at ease and more focused when you know your kids or your parents or even your pets are well cared for. Best part is this, care.com provides access to a variety of background check options you can purchase to help make sure that you're making the best hiring decision. That's my favorite part right there. They're letting you know there's a million different things for you to check out on the background check options so you know who's going to be there with your kids or with your parents or with your pet taking care of the situation. Care.com. Check it out now. If you go to care.com right now, you ready for this? To save 30% off care.com premium membership, visit care.com/rad parenting when you subscribe, and you're going to get 30% off. Like I said, the world's moving a million miles an hour. You just want to take care of your kids and all the responsibilities. Let care.com help. You're right there, because I have to I'll be the parent that's listening right now that's like, no way, never going to happen. You are crazy I would never offer my son or daughter a beer in this house.
Yep.
They know, they drink. I'll send you away, because I hear parents say, I'll send you away to a private school. I will put you are not going to be doing that in this home underneath my roof. Mm-hmm. And so then the thing that you're bringing out right now is, okay, so then they come out from underneath the screws you put down on them, and now it's freshman year at San Diego State.
And you as parents are nowhere to be found.
Nowhere.
So the people that are most invested in the safety of that young person at that point are nowhere to be found.
I've never had a beer before. I've never had sangria.
Right.
I've never had gin.
Okay.
I know. Yeah. How does that?
So I'm saying that the inclination to have been under wraps like that. And I am going to just say one thing, that I would hope, it would be my sincere hope, that if as a parent you are taking that stance for any variety of reasons, including history of alcoholism or
right
just
there.
Because there's this mentality of like, well, I don't want to give my kid the idea that we're being permissive. Like, they're not adults, right?
Let's say this. Your grandfather was an alcoholic.
Yep.
Your father's an alcoholic.
Yep.
And your uncle is.
Yep.
That gene runs in your body, bro.
Yep.
We aren't messing around with it.
So then my strong recommendation is that is a real and valid conversation that needs explanation. Straight, like, no's without understanding are not going to stick. They're just not, especially to the adolescent brain that is pushing their own individualism or individualization. So it's really important, if you have those super, super valid reasons, whatever you perceive to be valid reasons, what I'm going to encourage you to do is, if you're going to take a hard no, even that hard no should be followed by or accompanied by some really solid information about why you as a parent are taking that stance from the perspective of wanting to keep your child safe. Because if you don't, and they don't have understanding, then I'm just telling you, it's natural human behavior that whether it's a high school party that they go out to and they tell you, no, there's not going to be any drinking because so-and-so's parents are home. We know this is that happens all the time, that he or she may indulge in experimenting with alcohol and whatever else without you being there to help guide them and keep them safe. Whereas in the safety of your household, and again, I'm going to just say for families for whom this is not this is really speaking to parents who are on the fence. We don't have really strong issues with alcohol or strong opinions, but we're trying to figure out what we want our stand to be. I would suggest that in the safety of your home, that you give your child opportunities, and it probably starts with over, a nice pasta dinner, dad and I or mom and I or whatever are sharing, are going to have some wine tonight. Do you want to have a little taste? And just not even for the taste, although that's part of it, but see how it makes you feel in your body. See what it does to your head. And sometimes it feels like in the moment that it's kind of calming or whatever, but also know that here's what alcohol does. There's a dehydration factor. Your body does not like when the alcohol starts to leave it if it's had too much. And so there's this thing you've heard of called a hangover. That's real. That's your body going, wait a minute, not very happy with what you did to me. And then the same thing with the drugs. I had a conversation with my oldest daughter where, she just straight up asked me I want to know more about, the drugs that are out there and what have you tried and, what do you know about this? And the conversation really ended with me saying, here's what I'm going to say. If you're going to try these things, you need to understand that this comes with adult responsibility. There are, what goes up must come down, if you will. And here are the ones that I would say straight up off limits. Not even because I say, I'm encouraging you to choose to make those drugs off limits, because the risks that they come with are far too great to be worth the hour or 3 hours or 5 hours of fun or experimentation or whatever. And I think she was able to hear that last part because I led with, here are the things, if you're going to do them, here are the things you need to look out for. Here's how they're probably going to make you feel. I would encourage you, if you're going to try this one, to make sure you're with your closest friends who have got your back and are going to help keep you safe and make you feel safe. And that has been really successful.
That sounds like mushrooms.
For example, yes. And that has been, again, so now speaking as a parent, what I have learned with my daughter, not every child is the same, but is her inclination to have to go to extremes just doesn't exist.
And I got to step in really quick because I know you're on the Stairmaster or you're jogging. I'm talking to our listener.
You haven't fallen off already.
Hey, what's up? Joe Sib. Just whispering in your ear right now, Anea is talking about her 21-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
We're not talking about the daughter that's, 11 now?
8, Joe.
8.
Get with it.
Sorry.
8. Going to be 9 in September.
She's a very smart child.
She is, and she's quite tall, so yes.
There you go.
Anyway.
But my point being is because with rad parenting, we touch on subjects that, we're not some a show that goes oh my gosh, they're talking about crazy things here. But this was a subject that you and I both wanted to approach with definitely a sense of responsibility from you and I.
Disclaimers.
But also disclaimers. and also letting people know that once again, we're having a discussion here. 2 parents in the room. I think sometimes people, might forget that we are both parents. And we are maneuvering out there with you. We're on our little ship and we're crossing paths with you. And this is just some information that I'm using that little light from back in the day, Morse code.
Yes.
There are beers on this ship.
Yes.
My 15-year-old asked for one.
Yes.
What do I do?
What do I do?
You guys can't see my arms moving, but I'm doing that little thing.
I wish they could, Joe.
All right. But I think that's just important because I will say this, that I have heard, I don't want to go into give it away if they're listening to this show, but I did have a parent once say to me straight up that she pays her children not to do drugs and alcohol. Straight up. Pays them money. And I was like, how much money do you pay them? And the number that she gave me for one kid, because they were younger, and then the older kid that was like 20 now, was like, it was like, I'm talking like, it was a salary for like,
And does she drug test them? Does she?
I don't
like,
know. But she was so intent on drugs and alcohol. She goes, I pay my two kids straight up each year this amount of money to not do drugs and alcohol.
And that is absolutely her prerogative.
But it was like, I was like, wow.
That's hardcore. And I would guess, and I don't know for sure, but there is probably some history there that makes that a, really compelling, like, oh my gosh, this is something I have to do. This is a way in which I have to protect my child.
There was definitely that history there.
And I think that, what we're saying, what we're always saying with Rad Parenting is, take what works for you and leave the rest, or take a piece of it and make it your own to suit your own unique household, your own unique style of parenting, your child who is a unique human being. Not nothing we say is going to work for every parent and every child. So I think it's really important to say that. I think the other thing that I would be remiss if I didn't include this is we really also need to be conscious about our own social programming around alcohol and drugs, and how we have, there's lots of value judgments loaded in this. And I think sometimes, for example, although alcohol can yield much more destructive behaviors than things like, for example, cannabis, that we still have certain stigmas attached because we go, well, cannabis is a drug and alcohol is like, well, alcohol is alcohol. And I think that we really also have to be careful, because in either case, we have body chemistries that those substances are interacting with. And so, for example, you saying like your little tour with weed, didn't go well, and you had experienced paranoia and whatever else.
Oh gosh, it was the worst.
Yes, and that's not the first time I've heard that. And in the same way that some people are like, cannot touch brown spirits, makes me crazy. Like I turn into a different person, but I'm totally fine with like tequila or beer or wine. These are things that we need to learn about ourselves. And, certainly I think it would be ideal that we all be capable of like socializing or calming our stress levels down without having to, ingest substances of any sort.
You're saying the same thing. Hey,
including pharmaceuticals. P.S.
Oh, that's
including
huge.
Pharmaceuticals. So this is something that is a testy subject. It's a tough one, but I'm, as always, coming from the perspective of we have to look at what's actually going on out in the world, what our children are most likely to do in terms of their own individual path through adolescence, and approach it with eyes wide open in terms of the ultimate goal, which is, how do I keep my child safe as he or she navigates some of these challenges, which will inevitably include access or opportunity to experiment with drugs and alcohol.
I've always said that the job I feel as a parent is to prepare your children for the world. And if I use the analogy of the ship, which I've used a million times on this show, is when they're at home, they're on the dock, you're with them, you're showing them how to tie knots. Mm-hmm. Hey, this is how the radio works. Hey, what about this? Oh, don't worry. That was only if you capsize. Will that ever happen? Probably not. But if it does,
we want you to be prepared.
Yep. And then you do little runs around the together where you're on the ship with them, and then the analogy leads into a certain point, they get on it, and that's when they go to San Diego State or Phoenix. And the reason I'm saying both those schools, because those are party schools.
Yes.
Which is so funny, because now that my daughter's talking about colleges, I'm like, hey, San Diego State's pretty cool. Like, Dad, that's a party school. What about Phoenix? That's a party school.
Joe,
really? I didn't know it. So the thing that I feel is that when that ship leaves port, that you want them to be prepared. And as much as I wish the world wasn't a place full of alcohol and drugs, and like you just said, the pharmaceuticals that are in, the painkillers. I mean, I don't know if you saw it over the holiday, but there's a whole new campaign where it's DUI and also pharmaceutical drugs,
yes,
like
yes.
driving buzzed or driving, and
same thing.
And I was like, wow, that is such an epidemic.
Yeah, it is, and it's really important to kind of like check ourselves and our own programming and our own sort of values around these things. And I think the one other thing I want to say is, anything that is used for the purpose of escapism, like like we were just talking in a recent episode about, sitting with the discomfort, sitting with the disappointment, sitting with the
that was the whole show we did
out.
on letting your kids fail.
That's right. Letting them struggle. That I think more than anything, like when beyond a sort of genetic predisposition, part of what makes our children or sets them up, I think, for addictive behaviors is when we are not doing enough around helping them to tap into and develop those inner tools for managing obstacles and challenges and fear and anxiety and all of those things. And so without those inner tools and other ways of supporting themselves through that, they're just turning to drugs and alcohol of a variety of sorts to numb themselves and just not feel those uncomfortable feelings. So there's also work that we can do around that.
Absolutely. I feel like we tackled and took our first swing at this topic and we covered all our bases. I feel that way.
I would think it's a great start. And I'm absolutely certain that if ever we were to get a bunch of emails on a show, that we're probably going to get several on this one. And you know what? Please, we would love to hear from you. If you've got big reactions that are negative, if you've got big reactions that are positive, all the stuff in between, we would really, really love the feedback. And we will get back to you or maybe create another show out of it. So
absolutely.
I think it'd be
And
great.
also it's conversations, as we always say, two parents trying to figure it out. You're our community. You're a part of the community. A lot of these shows are driven. This was a topic that was brought up to us through the emails. And I'll leave you with, if any questions you guys have, radparenting@gmail.com. Also, keep those texts coming. If you text the word parenting to 313131, we send you the episode each and every week, generally before everyone else kind of gets it through iTunes, which is super cool. Also, any dates that either Anea is speaking or I'm going out on the road doing stand-up, you can come to any one of those events as well. Is that it? I feel good.
I feel pretty good too.
I feel pretty good right now.
And we have not had anything to drink.
We're not escaping. We use Rad Parenting to escape. My name is Joe Sib.
And Anea Bogue.
This is Rad Parenting, and we're out of here.
Late.